that God himself directed your steps to this video right now, at this very moment, because he has something to say to you about your situation. He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. And he has already written the verdict. But first, I need to tell you about a woman named Sister Grace. And I want you to pay close attention to her story, because somewhere in it you are going to see yourself. Sister Grace was a widow. She had worked her entire life to build a small business. Nothing glamorous, just a little shop that had been in her family for 3 generations. Her late husband had poured his blood and sweat into that shop. Her children had grown up playing in the back room while she served customers. That shop was not just a business, it was a legacy. It was a testimony. And then one day, without warning, a man appeared with documents. He claimed that her late husband had signed over the deed to the property years before he died. He had lawyers. He had papers with signatures. He had witnesses. Grace had nothing except the truth. And the truth, as anyone who has ever been in a courtroom knows, is sometimes the most powerless thing in the world without the right weapons. The case began, and immediately things started going wrong. Her lawyer made mistakes that seemed almost impossible to make accidentally. Documents she needed disappeared. Witnesses who had promised to testify for her suddenly changed their minds without explanation. She would receive information that her court date had been moved and then show up on the wrong day. One judge who seemed sympathetic to her case was suddenly transferred and replaced by someone who looked at her as if she were guilty before she even opened her mouth. Sister Grace came to me broken. She was not sleeping. She had lost weight. Her children were watching their mother disintegrate before their eyes. And she said something to me that I want you to hear. She said, "Pastor, I have prayed every prayer I know how to pray. I have fasted. I have cried. I have begged God. But it feels like heaven is silent. It feels like something is blocking my prayers from getting through." And when she said that, something rose up in my spirit, because I recognized what she was describing. It was not just a legal attack. It was a coordinated spiritual assault. There was witchcraft involved. There was a curse operating against her. There were principalities and powers that had been assigned to her destruction, and they were walking through the legal system to execute their assignment. Now, I know that some of you right now, if you are new to this channel, if you are new to the idea of spiritual warfare, you might be tempted to dismiss what I just said. You might be thinking, that sounds extreme. That sounds like superstition. But I want you to stay with me, because the Bible is not silent on this subject. The Bible is not vague about this subject. In fact, the Apostle Paul, writing in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, said it plainly and powerfully when he wrote, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." Did you catch that? Your enemy is not your opponent in that courtroom. Your enemy is not that corrupt judge. Your enemy is not that lying witness. Your enemy is not that scheming business partner. Your enemy is not your ex-spouse or their attorney. Your enemy is not flesh and blood. Your enemy is a spiritual entity, and he's using people as instruments. And if you go into that battle fighting only on the natural level, with only natural weapons, you will be bringing a knife to a supernatural gunfight. But here's the good news. And this is the news that caused Sister Grace to weep when she finally heard it. God has already given you a weapon. Not just any weapon. A weapon that has been battle tested for 3,000 years. A weapon that has defeated kings and armies and courts and conspiracies and curses and witchcraft and every kind of enemy attack you can imagine. A weapon that does not require you to have money or connections or the right last name or the favor of men. It is a psalm. One psalm. And before I tell you which psalm it is, I want to make sure you understand why this psalm specifically is the one you need in a courtroom situation. Because there are 150 psalms and they are not all the same. Each one was written in a specific context for a specific kind of battle. And the one I am going to share with you today was written by a man who knew exactly what it felt like to have enemies rise up against him with false accusations, with plots, with conspiracies, with supernatural assignment, with coordinated attacks designed to destroy him completely. That man was King David. And the psalm is Psalm 35. Now stay with me. Do not jump ahead. Do not go straight to Psalm 35 just yet. Because before you pray this psalm, you need to understand something about the spiritual landscape of legal battles. You need to understand what is really happening in the unseen realm when you are under attack in court. And when you understand that, Psalm 35 is going to hit you differently. It is going to become a weapon in your hands instead of just beautiful poetry. I want to tell you something that most preachers will not say from the pulpit. Most preachers stay far away from this because it makes people uncomfortable. But I would rather make you uncomfortable and alive than comfortable and defeated. So here it is. When people want to destroy you through the legal system, they do not always walk alone in the natural. In many cultures, in many situations, when someone has made a decision to take you down, when someone has decided that they will use the courts to strip you of your home, your children, your business, your freedom, your reputation, they often also consult the kingdom of darkness. They invoke curses. They engage in witchcraft. They visit shrines or certain practitioners or certain people who claim to be able to influence outcomes through spiritual means. And those spiritual assignments are real. They are not imaginary. They are not folklore. They are actual demonic deployments that can create confusion, that can cause things to go wrong for no apparent natural reason, that can cause people to lie who had no intention of lying, that can cause documents to disappear, that can cause judges and lawyers to make decisions that seem irrational. I have counseled too many people. I have seen too many situations. I have walked with too many brothers and sisters through legal battles where everything about the pattern screamed spiritual interference. And every single time when they finally went to war in the spirit, when they finally picked up the right weapons and prayed the right prayers with the right understanding, things broke. The tide turned. What had been immovable suddenly moved. What had been shut suddenly opened. What had been lost was suddenly found. What had been corrupted suddenly came to light. This is not a coincidence. This is the power of the kingdom of God operating in legal warfare. Now let me take you deeper into what you are actually dealing with when you go to court under a spiritual attack. Because I want to give you a complete picture before we get to the psalm and the prayer. Because knowledge is power. The Bible says in Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And in the context of spiritual warfare, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is death. Ignorance is defeat. Ignorance is losing your children and your home and your business and your reputation to an enemy who has been studying you for years and knows exactly which weapons to use against you. Let me tell you about the 3 primary spiritual weapons your enemy uses in legal warfare. The first weapon is the spirit of confusion. This is one of the most devastating and most commonly deployed weapons in legal battles. The spirit of confusion operates by clouding minds, by causing people to misread documents, by making clear things appear complicated, by causing your own lawyers to give you wrong advice, by causing you to forget important details at critical moments, by making you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, by creating miscommunication between you and the people on your side. When the spirit of confusion is operating in a legal situation, it feels like you are constantly 2 steps behind. It feels like no matter how much you prepare, something always goes wrong. It feels like you are fighting with your hands tied behind your back. The second weapon is the spirit of false witnesses. Now, this one has deep spiritual roots. In the Old Testament, bearing false witness was one of the most serious crimes in Israel, and it was specifically outlawed in the 10 Commandments. Why? Because God understood the destructive power of lies spoken in a legal context. When someone testifies falsely against you, they are not just lying. They are partnering with the father of lies, who is the devil, to construct a false reality designed to imprison you or strip you of what rightfully belongs to you. And behind every persistent campaign of false testimony, there is usually a demonic assignment. There is usually something that has empowered those lies, that has given them a legal right in the spiritual realm to operate against you. The third weapon is the spirit of delay. This is the one that breaks people down over time. A legal battle that drags on for years, that keeps getting postponed, that keeps hitting new obstacles, that never seems to reach a resolution, is often operating under the influence of a spirit of delay. This spirit is designed to wear you out. It is designed to exhaust your finances. It is designed to destroy your hope. It is designed to make you give up just before your breakthrough. The enemy knows that if he can just keep you in the desert long enough, you will eventually stop believing that the promised land exists. And when you stop believing, when you stop fighting, when you accept defeat, he wins without ever having to win fairly. Now, here's what I want you to understand about all 3 of these weapons. They are not invincible. They are not unstoppable. They are not more powerful than the weapons God has given you. In fact, every single one of these demonic assignments has a specific counter in the kingdom of God. Confusion is broken by the spirit of wisdom and revelation. False witnesses are exposed by the spirit of truth. Delay is destroyed by the spirit of sudden intervention. The God who moves suddenly, who reverses situations overnight, who can turn a 40-year desert journey into a moment of crossing over. And Psalm 35 is the key that unlocks all 3 of these counterattacks. Let me tell you the background of this psalm, because context matters. David wrote Psalm 35 at a specific moment in his life when he was being haunted, persecuted, and falsely accused by people who had once been his allies. These were not strangers. These were people he had trusted, people he had helped, and now they were turning against him with coordinated ferocity. They were lying about him. They were setting legal traps for him. The Hebrew word for what they were doing can be translated as bringing false legal charges. This was not just gossip. This was organized, systematic, legally framed persecution. And in the middle of that attack, David did not run. He did not collapse. He did not try to fight back in the flesh. He did something that changed the spiritual atmosphere around him. He went to God, not with nice, polite, comfortable prayers. He went to God with bold, urgent warfare prayer. He called on God as his defender, as his attorney, as his warrior, as his shield. And what he prayed in Psalm 35 became a template, a divine legal brief filed in the courts of heaven that we can use to this day. Let me walk you through this psalm carefully, because every verse is a weapon and you need to know how to use it. Psalm 35 verse 1 says, "Plead my cause, O Lord, with those who strive with me. Fight against those who fight against me." Do you understand what David is doing here? He is appointing God as his legal representative. He is saying, Lord, I am under legal attack. and I need you to step into this case on my behalf. The Hebrew word for plead here is rib, and it is specifically a legal term. It means to conduct a legal case. David is literally saying, God, file the legal papers on my behalf. Stand up in court for me. Make my case. This is extraordinary. This is the audacity of faith. David is saying that the King of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth, the one who holds all judges in the palm of his hand, is his personal attorney. And not just his attorney, but his champion warrior. Because he does not stop there. He says, fight against those who fight against me. This is a declaration of divine warfare. David is saying, if they have declared war on me, I am asking God to declare war on them. Not war in the sense of destruction of human souls, but war in the sense of dismantling every weapon, every plan, every conspiracy, every spiritual assignment that has been deployed against him. When you pray verse 1 of Psalm 35 over your court case, you are doing something profound. You are exercising your spiritual authority as a child of God to invite divine intervention into your legal situation. You are not begging. You are not pleading from a place of weakness. You are making a bold, faith-filled declaration that God himself is now your legal representation. And I promise you, no human attorney on earth, no matter how skilled, no matter how experienced, no matter how many cases they have won, is a match for the attorney you just hired. Verse 2 says, take hold of shield and buckler and stand up for my help. Here David is calling on the warrior aspect of God. The shield and buckler were the heavy weapons of ancient warfare. David is saying, God, take up your war equipment on my behalf. He is picturing God as a mighty warrior who has been waiting, weapons in hand, for the invitation to enter the battle. And here is what I want you to understand. God does not enter battles uninvited in the lives of his people. He is sovereign, but he has given us authority. And that authority means he waits for us to exercise it. He waits for us to pray. He waits for us to call on him. He waits for us to give him permission to move in our situation. And when we do, he does not tiptoe into the battle. He comes in with his full arsenal. Verse 3 says, also draw out the spear and stop those who pursue me. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. David is asking God not just to fight, but to speak. He is asking God to reassure him. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. In the middle of the battle, in the middle of the terror and the uncertainty and the sleepless nights, David is crying out for the personal word of God to come and minister to his inner man. Because here is what happens in long legal battles. Even when you are winning in the spirit, even when the tide is turning, the battle inside you, the battle against despair and fear and doubt, can become just as dangerous as the battle outside. And David understood that. He knew he needed not just God's power, but God's peace. Not just God's strategy, but God's voice speaking directly to his soul. Can you hear him? Say to my soul, I am your salvation. Say it, God. Not just do it. Say it. Let me hear it. Let me feel it. Let me know in the deepest part of me that you have got this, that you are in this, that I am not alone. And I want to stop here for a moment and speak directly to someone watching this video right now. Someone who has been fighting for so long that the fear has moved in. It is not just about the court case anymore. The fear has moved into your sleep. It has moved into your eating. It has moved into your relationships. You snap at your children because you are carrying this weight. You cannot be fully present with the people you love because your mind is always going back to the case, running through scenarios, imagining worse outcomes. And somewhere deep inside you, a small voice keeps whispering, what if God doesn't show up? What if this time it doesn't work out? What if you lose? I want to tell you, that voice is not from God. That voice is from the enemy. That is the spirit of fear. And it is one of the most powerful weapons in the enemy's arsenal because it operates from the inside. It does not need to be present in the courtroom if it is already present in your heart. And David's prayer, say to my soul, I am your salvation, is the counter to that attack. When you pray those words, you are inviting God to speak directly to your fears, to walk into the interior of your soul with the lamp of his presence and drive out every shadow. Now let us continue. Verses 4 through 6 say, let those be put to shame and brought to dishonor who seek after my life. Let those be turned back and brought to confusion who plot my hurt. Let them be like chaff before the wind, and let the angel of the Lord chase them. Let their way be dark and slippery, and let the angel of the Lord pursue them. Now I need you to pay close attention here, because this is where the psalm becomes specifically surgical against the spiritual forces operating through the people who are attacking you in court. David is not asking God to destroy the people. He is asking God to dismantle their plans. He is asking that confusion fall on those who are plotting against him. He is asking that their path be made dark and slippery, meaning that their schemes would not find solid footing, that nothing they plan against him would succeed. And notice what he calls him to execute this: the angel of the Lord. Not just any angel, the angel of the Lord. In the Old Testament, appearances of the angel of the Lord are often interpreted as appearances of Christ himself in pre-incarnate form. This is divine warrior. This is the captain of the host of heaven. And David is asking God to deploy this supernatural warrior specifically against the people and the spiritual forces behind them who are working to destroy him through the legal system. When you pray this over your court case, something shifts in the spirit realm. The demonic assignments that have been given legal ground to operate in your situation through the false accusations, through the spirit of confusion, through the coordinated plots against you, start to lose their footing. They start to scatter because the angel of the Lord is chasing them. I remember a brother who came to us here at Joshua Selman Wisdom. He was in a business dispute that had turned into a criminal accusation. Someone had framed him. There was documentation that had been falsified, records that had been manipulated, witnesses who had been coached. Everything was pointing toward his conviction. And in the natural, his lawyers were telling him to consider a plea deal. They said the evidence against him was too strong. He came to us 3 weeks before his trial date, and we prayed Psalm 35 over his situation. Specifically, we prayed verses 4 through 6. We called on the angel of the Lord to chase those who were lying against him. We asked God to make their way dark and slippery. We declared that every plot against him would be turned back in confusion. 1 week before the trial, something happened that nobody expected. One of the key witnesses against him, the one with the most damning testimony, suddenly had a change of heart. Not only did he recant his false testimony, he revealed that he had been pressured into lying. And when he revealed that, it pulled a thread that unraveled the entire case against the brother. By the time the trial date arrived, the prosecution had no case. The charges were dropped. He walked out of that situation completely free. Now, was it Psalm 35 that did that? Let me be precise. It was God. But Psalm 35 was the key that opened the door to divine intervention. It was the prayer that activated the angels. It was the declaration that gave God the legal right in the spirit realm to move on this man's behalf. Let us keep going. Verses 7 through 8 say, for without cause they have hidden their net for me in a pit, which they have dug without cause for my soul. Let destruction come upon him unexpectedly, and let his net that he has hidden catch himself. Into that very destruction let him fall. This is one of the most powerful principles in the entire psalm. David is calling on the law of sowing and reaping at a spiritual level. He is saying, God, let the trap they set for me become their own trap. And this is consistent with the patterns we see throughout scripture. In the book of Esther, Haman builds a gallows to hang Mordecai and ends up being hanged on his own gallows. In the book of Daniel, the men who schemed to throw Daniel into the lion's den end up being thrown into the lion's den themselves with their entire families. In the book of Psalms, we are told again and again that the wicked fall into the pit that they have dug for the righteous. This is not coincidence. This is the divine law of retribution operating in the spiritual realm. When someone digs a pit for you, when someone sets a legal trap for you without cause, when someone lies to have you destroyed when you have done them no wrong, they have activated a spiritual law that will turn against them. And when you pray Psalm 35 verses 7 and 8, you are calling on God to activate that law fully and completely in your situation. I want to pause here and address something that some of you might be feeling right now, because some of you have been raised with a Christianity that is very passive, very non-confrontational. A Christianity that says, just pray nice prayers and let God do what he wants to do. And I want to tell you that I honor the sovereignty of God. I believe God is sovereign. But I also believe he has given us authority to use. And he has given us the model of David's prayers as an example of how to use that authority boldly, specifically, and without apology. When David prayed, let destruction come upon him unexpectedly, he was not being vindictive. He was not acting out of personal hatred. He was calling on divine justice. He was taking his case to the highest court in the universe and asking the judge of all the earth to render a verdict. And he was doing it with boldness because he knew he was innocent. He knew that God is not a God of injustice. He knew that it is right, it is holy, it is in alignment with the character of God to ask that wickedness be exposed and that the traps of the wicked be turned back on themselves. If you are innocent in your situation, and I know many of you watching this are innocent, then you have every right to stand before God and say, Lord, I am not guilty of what they are accusing me of. And I am asking you to expose the lies, to dismantle the traps, and to let what they planned for me come back on their own heads. That is not a vindictive prayer. That is a justice prayer. And the God of heaven, who is a God of justice, hears it. Let us continue with verses 9 through 10. And my soul shall be joyful in the Lord. It shall rejoice in his salvation. All my bones shall say, Lord, who is like you, delivering the poor from him who is too strong for him. Yes, the poor and the needy from him who plunders him. Here David does something remarkable. In the middle of the battle, before the victory has arrived, he begins to worship. He declares his joy. He declares his confidence in God's salvation. He says, my soul shall be joyful. Not will be joyful when this is over, shall be joyful now. In the storm, in the battle, in the uncertainty. And he does it by meditating on a specific attribute of God. He says, who is like you, delivering the poor from him who is too strong for him. This is David saying, I know the enemy is stronger than me in the natural. I know my opponent has more money, more connections, more influence in the legal system. I know I am outgunned in the natural. But I serve a God who specializes in delivering people from enemies who are too strong for them. That is what God does. That is who God is. And so I will rejoice right now before the verdict because I know my God. This is one of the most important things you can do in the middle of a legal battle. Worship before the breakthrough. Praise before the victory. This is not denial. This is not pretending the battle is not real. This is taking your eyes off the size of the enemy and putting them on the size of your God. And when you do that, something happens in the spiritual realm. Your praise becomes a weapon. Your worship becomes a warfare strategy. The enemy cannot function in an atmosphere of genuine faith-filled worship. He cannot maintain his assignments against you when you are lifting up the name of the Lord with everything you have. I want to tell you about a sister in our congregation here at Joshua Selman Wisdom. She was in a custody battle, the most vicious kind of legal battle there is, the kind where your children are being used as weapons against you. Her ex-husband had money. He had a powerful attorney. He had witnesses who were willing to say things about her that were completely untrue. And his strategy was to destroy her character so completely that no judge would award her custody of her children. She came to us destroyed. She said, I cannot even pray anymore. Every time I try to pray, all I can think about is losing my children. I cannot get past the fear to even begin to pray. And I gave her one instruction. I said, don't start with intercession. Start with worship. Every morning, before you do anything else, spend 30 minutes just worshiping God. Not asking for anything. Not presenting your case. Just worshiping him for who he is. She did that for 2 weeks. And she told me that by the end of the second week, something had shifted inside her. The fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. The peace of God that passes understanding had moved in and taken up residence in a way that she could not explain. She started sleeping again. She started eating again. She started being present with her children in the time she had with them, instead of being consumed by fear about losing them. And then she started praying Psalm 35. With everything she had, with boldness and authority and clarity, she prayed it every day for 30 days leading up to the custody hearing. On the day of the hearing, her ex-husband's witnesses began contradicting each other under cross-examination. The attorney for the other side made an error that gave her attorney an opening. And the judge, who everyone had said was favorable to husbands in custody cases, made a ruling that shocked everyone in that courtroom. She received primary custody of her children. And when she walked out of that courthouse holding her children's hands, she looked up at the sky and she said, who is like you, Lord? Who delivers the poor from him who is too strong for him? I am telling you this because I want you to understand that Psalm 35 is not theory. It is not poetry. It is a living weapon. It works because God is real. Because his word is real. Because when you pray in alignment with his word, in alignment with his character, with faith and boldness, he moves, he acts, he intervenes, he fights. Let me continue with the psalm. Verses 11 through 12 say, fierce witnesses rise up. They ask me things that I do not know. They reward me evil for good, to the sorrow of my soul. David is describing something that every person who has been through a false accusation can identify with. People who rise up against him with questions designed to trap him. People who repay his kindness with betrayal. There is something particularly devastating about being betrayed by people you have helped. When the person who is accusing you is someone you once blessed, someone you once supported, someone who was in need and you were there for them. And now they are standing in a courtroom telling lies about you. It creates a wound that goes beyond the legal situation. It touches your trust. It touches your faith in people. It makes you question your own judgment. It makes you feel like being good is foolish. Like being generous is dangerous. Like opening your heart to people is an invitation to be destroyed. And I want to speak to that pain for a moment before we continue. Because I know that some of you are carrying this specific wound. You did good to the person who is now persecuting you. You helped them. You trusted them. You maybe even loved them. And now they have turned on you. And the pain of that betrayal is almost worse than the legal battle itself. But I want to show you something. Even David experienced this. The man after God's own heart, the one who wrote Psalms and worshipped God with abandon, even he was betrayed by people he had been generous to. And God did not prevent that betrayal, but God did use it to forge in David something that could not have been formed any other way. A depth of trust in God alone. A complete and total dependency on the Lord that comes only when every human support has been stripped away. When the people who should be with you turn against you, God is not far. He is very near. He is drawing you closer to himself through the very wound that the enemy intended to use to destroy you. And when you pray these verses of Psalm 35, you are not just praying a legal prayer. You are praying a healing prayer. You are releasing into God's hands the pain of the betrayal, the sorrow of your soul, and asking him to render justice, not just in the courtroom, but in your own heart. Verses 13 through 14 continue. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled myself with fasting, and my prayer would return to my own bosom. I paced about as though he were my friend or brother. I bowed down heavily, as one who mourns for his mother. This is extraordinary. David is saying, I fasted for you when you were sick. I prayed for you when you were in trouble. I mourned with you as if you were my family. And now you are the one attacking me. This is the full picture of what makes betrayal so devastating. It is not just that they are attacking you. It is that you love them enough to fast for them. You love them enough to weep for them. And they took that love and turned it into a weapon against you. But look at what David does with that. He does not say, and therefore I hate them. He does not sink into bitterness. He brings it to God. He lays it out before the throne. He says, God, you know what I did for these people. You saw my fasting. You saw my prayers. You know the truth of this relationship. You be the judge. And this is one of the most powerful things you can do in a legal battle. Bring your history with the person to God. Let God be the judge of the whole story. Let him see not just the accusations they are making against you today, but everything that has happened. Every kindness you showed. Every sacrifice you made. Every prayer you prayed for them. God sees the full picture. And when you ask him to judge based on the full picture, the truth is already on your side. Now let us move to verses 15 through 17. But in my adversity they rejoiced and gathered together. Attackers gathered against me, and I did not know it. They tore at me and did not cease. With ungodly mockers at feasts, they gnashed at me with their teeth. Lord, how long will you look on? Rescue me from their destructions, my precious life from the lions. Here David describes something that many people in prolonged legal battles experience. The people who are attacking you seem to be drawing energy from the attack. They are joyful about your adversity. They gather together to strategize against you. They are relentless. And there is something about the relentlessness of the enemy that is particularly demoralizing, because it feels personal. It feels like they are not just pursuing a legal outcome. They are pursuing your destruction. And in that place of exhaustion and bewilderment, David cries out, Lord, how long will you look on? Rescue me. This is a prayer of desperation. And I want you to know that God is not offended by prayers of desperation. He is not put off when you come to him completely broken and say, I cannot take this anymore. How long? How long do I have to endure this? How long before you move? How long before the breakthrough comes? The Psalms are full of this cry. How long, oh Lord, how long? And every single time, God answers. Not always in the way we expect, Not always on our timeline, but he always answers. And the very cry of how long is itself a declaration of faith, because you are still talking to him. You have not given up. You have not walked away. You are still there, still in his face, still believing that he is going to move, even while you are crying out in pain. Rescue me from their destructions, my precious life from the lions. My precious life. In the Hebrew, this word for precious is the same word used to describe something of great value, something irreplaceable. David is saying, God, my life is precious, not worthless, precious. And the lions who are trying to devour it need to be stopped by you. That is the confidence of a son speaking to a father. My life is precious to you, Father, and I am asking you to defend it. Let me tell you something important here. One of the strategies of the enemy in legal battles is to make you feel worthless, to make you feel like you do not deserve to win, to make you feel like the accusations are somehow reflecting something true about you, even when they are not. And if you accept that lie, if you believe that you are not worth defending, you will pray weak, uncertain, apologetic prayers that do not carry the weight needed to move in the spirit realm. But when you know your value in God's eyes, when you know that you are precious, when you know that you are the child of the Most High God, bought with the blood of his own son, when you know that, you can come before God and say, Father, my life is precious. My situation matters. My case matters. The truth matters. And I am asking you, my defender and my God, to move on my behalf. Verse 17 says, Lord, how long will you look on? Rescue me from their destructions, my precious life from the lions. And this cry, this raw, honest prayer is answered. Not immediately in the psalm, but in the pattern of God's dealing with David throughout his life. The breakthrough comes. The rescue comes. Not on David's schedule, but it comes. Let us look at verses 19 through 21. Let them not rejoice over me, who are wrongfully my enemies, nor let them wink with the eye who hate me without a cause. For they do not speak peace, but they devise deceitful matters against those who are quiet in the land. They also opened their mouths wide against me and said, aha, aha, our eyes have seen it. Here David identifies a spiritual dynamic that is important for you to understand. The enemies who are coming against him are not just wrong about facts. They are spiritually motivated against him. They hate him without a cause. This is significant language because it echoes later in scripture when Jesus describes the hatred that will come against his disciples. They hated me without a cause. And what this tells us is that there is a category of opposition that is not primarily about anything you have done or not done. It is spiritually orchestrated. It is demonically motivated. It is hatred for the light, opposition to the purpose of God in your life. When your enemies are not just opposing you, but seem almost supernaturally energized to destroy you. When their hatred seems disproportionate to any natural explanation. When the intensity of their attack makes no sense in natural terms. That is a sign that you are dealing with something that goes beyond a personality conflict or a business dispute. You are dealing with a principality that has identified the call of God on your life and has decided to stop you before you fulfill it. And the courtroom is just the arena they have chosen for that battle. I want to address this directly to someone watching this video on Joshua Selman Wisdom right now. You are not just in a legal battle. You are in a destiny battle. The enemy is not primarily after your money or your property or your children or your freedom. He is after your assignment. He knows what God has called you to do, what God has built you to be, what God has placed in you that is designed to shake the kingdom of darkness and advance the kingdom of God. And he is using this legal situation to try to stop you before you get there. But here's the thing he does not tell you. He cannot stop what God has ordained. He can delay. He can harass, he can wound, but he cannot stop it. Because when God has written something in the eternal purposes, no court case in the natural world can overturn the verdict of heaven. And Psalm 35 is your access to that heavenly verdict. Let us keep reading. Verses 22 to 24 say, this you have seen, O Lord, do not keep silence. O Lord, do not be far from me. Stir yourself and awake to my judgment, my God and my Lord. Vindicate me, O Lord my God, according to your righteousness, and let them not rejoice over me. Listen to the boldness of this prayer. Stir yourself. David is essentially saying, God, wake up, get up, move. This situation requires your direct intervention, and I am calling on you to act. This is extraordinary boldness in prayer. This is not the prayer of a defeated man. This is not the prayer of someone who has accepted that God will not move. This is the prayer of a son who knows his father, who knows his character, who knows his power, and who has the audacity to say, Father, it is time to move. I need you right now. Stir yourself. I want to challenge you today, in the context of your court case, to pray with this level of boldness. Stop praying timid prayers. Stop approaching God as if you are not sure whether he wants to be involved in your situation. He already said in his word, I will fight for you. He already said, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. He already said, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He has already declared his intention. Your job is to take hold of that declaration, that covenant promise, and pray it back to him with all the faith and authority he has placed in you. Vindicate me, O Lord my God, according to your righteousness. Notice what David is appealing to. Not his own righteousness, God's righteousness. He is saying, God, I know I am not perfect. I know I have faults, but I am innocent of what they are accusing me of. And I am asking you to vindicate me, not because I am perfectly righteous in myself, but because you are. Because your justice is real. Because your truth will prevail. This is an important point. You do not have to be a perfect person to pray Psalm 35 boldly. You do not have to have lived a spotless life. What you need is to be genuinely innocent of what is being charged against you, and to bring your case before a God whose righteousness covers the gap between his perfection and your imperfection. Verse 25 says, let them not say in their hearts, so we would have it. Let them not say we have swallowed him up. David is declaring that the enemy will not get to celebrate. He is declaring prophetically that the victory he is asking for is coming, and that the enemies who have been waiting to say we destroyed him will be disappointed. They will not get to say we won. They will not get to say we swallowed him up. Their celebration will be premature, because God is about to intervene. You need to make this declaration over your situation. Whatever is happening in that courtroom, whatever the current situation looks like, declare it out loud right now, right where you are. The enemy will not get to celebrate. He will not swallow me up. God is fighting.